provisions never would have become law. There's no question about that, I don't think. But where I think we've missed the boat is we are not powerless to do something about this. There are options. Even though some of this legislation took away options from women in Ohio, we still do have options to try to turn around this situation. And that story has not been told yet. And that's part of why we're here today, is to let people know that there is something that can be done about this. This isn't the end of the story. As much as Governor Kasich and his friends would like to pretend that this chapter has been closed now, I think the governor literally went fishing yesterday. He would rather talk about other things. This issue is still relevant, and there are things that we can do about it. And there are three things that we can do about it. Number one is there is an election next year, I'm aware of. But I don't want to just tell people that the only solution is to vote these folks out of office, although that's not an option that I discourage people from talking about. There's also some legal challenges that we can look at, and there's a lot of folks in what I would just call a coalition of people of goodwill that are looking at all of those possibilities. And I think you're going to see that in the next few weeks, because some of these provisions arguably violate not just Ohio law, but I think the United States Constitution. I don't know if it's constitutional, quite frankly, to tell a rape crisis counselor that they cannot give a rape victim all of the information that they're entitled to about what their options are. I'm not sure if you can restrict someone's freedom of speech in that way. Right. I'm not sure that it's constitutionally clear that you can force a doctor to give a certain speech to their patient. Whether or not they believe that that speech that's been written by Governor Kasich and his friends in the legislature, whether they believe that that speech is accurate or true or medically legitimate, I'm not sure that we can force people to do that. Even if we, obviously we shouldn't force people to do that, but I'm not sure that legally under our Constitution we can actually do that. And so I think that those challenges may be coming forth. I'm not sure that we can tell a health clinic that they cannot, or a hospital that they cannot accept somebody who has had complications arising out of a legal medical procedure. I'm not sure that's legal to do that. I'm not sure that you can endanger the immediate health of a woman by restricting the types of healthcare facilities that can accept a patient. I'm not sure that that is consistent with the duty that every doctor has to protect their patients. Right. So I think there are going to be legal challenges on that, but there's another option that hasn't been talked about enough that I want to mention specifically today. The last time we saw something I think this egregious was in 2011 with the passage of Senate Bill 5. And there are a lot of parallels to what happened here and what happened with Senate Bill 5. You had a political party with a very extreme ideology that tried to force an extreme agenda, in that case having to do with workers' rights to organize, and forced it and kind of ramrodded it and railroaded it through a legislative process. But what was different was, because that wasn't a budget bill, there was an immediate kind of outlet for people's anger and frustration about that. And they immediately ended up taking it to the ballot. And that whole referendum process started within days of Senate Bill 5 being passed. And we all know the way that story turned out. Now, there's been frustration because the assumption is that we can't do that with this situation. But I don't think that's quite the case. Because although there are legal barriers to taking the entire budget to a referendum, it doesn't mean there are not portions of this budget, which quite frankly didn't even belong in a budget bill, that can't be taken to the ballot. So there's two different processes under Ohio law. There's a referendum, which actually stays a piece of legislation from going into effect immediately. But there's another process which is an initiated piece of legislation by collecting signatures from the citizenry. And it's about 3% of the folks that voted in the last gubernatorial election. And the way that the process works, we can get into a little bit more, and we can provide information to the media if they'd be interested in it. But basically, although it does not stay the legislation, we will have an opportunity, if there is a coalition of people who are interested in this. And I think that coalition would have to be larger than any one candidate or larger than any one campaign. But by collecting roughly 118,000 signatures, there is an opportunity to take certain extreme portions of this budget, get signatures from Ohioans all across the state in 44 out of the 88 counties, and force the legislature to deal with this issue when they go back into session in January of next year. And what I like about that is, first of all, how about having the debate that was denied? Yes.